A marker is a guidepost, a signpost. It's evidence that you're living your passions full out, full out. That means full out means full out 100%. And actually it was the markers that when I took Jack Canfield through the passion test, he actually said that it was the markers that really made the passion test the #1 tool being used all over the world. And he was just so excited because markers really help you to know when you've arrived, when you're actually living a passionate life. And not only that, what markers help you to do is to see a clear picture. They give you a clear picture of what your life looks like when you're living a passionate life. So the clear picture, a clearer picture, right? I mean, I like to tell everybody I'm the passion queen. I can write down 100 passions, really easy. But then when I have to do markers, I have to stop for a moment and I have to think, okay, when my life is ideal, I am. Now, if I'm living that passion out, full out, 100%, no room for improvement, what would have to happen? What would it look like? So markers are like standing, watching the movie of your life, and you're actually in the movie, right? Because you're living it, you see it 100%. You got it, it's done. So I want to share with you a story that really clearly illustrates the use of markers and actually how markers came to be. Chris and I, many years ago, were in India and we were visiting our dear friend, Dr. Pankaj Naram. And Dr. Naram owns this clinic in Bombay and it's always busy. I mean, all the time that I would go to his clinic, he would be sitting there taking people's pulse. That's what you do in Ayurveda. And he can take their pulse to actually know the state of their health. And then he'd give a prescription for their state of health. And I mean, he'd have a line about a mile long of people waiting to get their prescription and find out what's going on with their health. And so one day when we go to visit him, he's packing and he's packing pens and papers and pencils. And I turned to him and I said, Pankaj, are you going on vacation? And he says, nope. And I said, well, what are you doing? And he said, Janet, I'm going away, and I'm going away so that I can really get clear on the next 21 years of my life. I said, huh? And he said, 21 years ago, I was a bald man who knew nothing from nowhere. And I was an Ayurvedic doctor, but I was failing terribly. And I was failing terribly because I was lost in myself. I didn't know who I was. And all my clients left me. And one day I'm walking across the street in my little village and I see one of my clients. And I'm like so excited because he's so healthy. And I run up to him and I said, did I do this? And his client said, nope. And I said, who did? And he said, I've been studying with this Ayurvedic master who's over 100 years old. And Pankaj says, I have to meet him. And so his past client took him to meet this master. And Pankaj started studying with this master from that moment on. And one day the master turned to him and he said, Pankaj, if you could have, do, or be anything, what would that one thing be? In other words, his master was asking him, what's your top passion? And Pankaj said, that was a really awkward moment because here he was totally broke. He didn't have enough money to even take a bus at the time. And here was his master, on the other hand, asking him, what is your top passion? And so he stopped for a moment and he started thinking and he said, if I could have, do, or be anything, I'd be a world-renowned Ayurvedic master. And his master said, write it down. And then his master said what changed the passion test forever. His master said to Pankaj, he said, Pankaj, if you were already being a world-renowned Ayurvedic physician, what would be a signpost, a guidepost, evidence that you were living this passion full out? And Dr. Naram stopped for a moment and he said, if I was already a world-renowned Ayurvedic master, an Ayurvedic physician, what would be a guidepost? What would be a signpost? What would be evidence? And he said, if I was already being a world-renowned Ayurvedic physician, I would take the pulse of over 100,000 people. And his master said, write it down. And he said, anything else? And Pankaj said, it was really hard, but he, really went in and he said, if I was already a world-renowned Ayurvedic physician, I would have Ayurvedic clinics all over the world. And his master just said, write it down. Anything else? Pankaj said, if I was already, and now he's starting to get into it, if I was already a world-renowned Ayurvedic physician, Mother Teresa would come to my clinic and thank me for my work. And his master said, write it down. And his master said, anything else? And Pankaj thinking, if I was already a world-renowned Ayurvedic physician, I would take the pulse of the Dalai Lama. And his master just said, write it down. And then Pankaj turned to Chris and myself and he said, Janet, I have taken the pulse of over 400,000 people. I have clinics all over the world. In the 80s, Mother Teresa came to my clinic and thanked me for my work with HIV. And here was the really cool one. Pankaj and I were on our way to go to Kathmandu, and we were going to visit one of his masters, and we were sitting in the plane in Delhi on the tarmac waiting for the plane to take off, and Pankaj's cell phone rings. And guess who it was? You got it. It was the Dalai Lama, and he was asking Pankaj to come. He was not feeling well, and he was asking him if he would come and take his pulse. And I looked over at Pankaj and I said, hey, Pankaj, can I say hello? Joking. Anyway, so this is what is called markers. Markers say that you're living your passion 100%, no room for improvement. The point is, remember that living a passionate life is an inside-out job. There's this beautiful saying in the Vedas. It says, curving back on myself, I create again and again. So inside is where we want to get crystal clear. Everything is an inside-out job. And when you can get so crystal clear on what that passion looks like, and with markers, you start to really see the pieces, and it really gets very clear. You go deeper on what it looks like. That's when the magic starts to happen. That's when synchronicity starts to occur. That's when the people, places, and things start to show up. And there are markers that are really easy. Dr. Naram's, or to find markers that are really easy. Dr. Naram's passion, when my life is ideal, I am a world-renowned Ayurvedic physician, Ayurvedic master. That's what his passion was. That was easy to find markers for him. But now other people might put, when my life is ideal, I'm totally enlightened. Now, how do you do that? Well, you ask them, all right, if you're totally enlightened, what would have to happen? What would occur? How would you feel? What would other people say to you? So think about it. If your passion was, when my life is ideal, I'm totally enlightened, then number one, now if it were me, if I was totally enlightened, wow, I would wake up and I would just be in love with life. Everything would be flow. That's a marker. What else could happen? Well, if I was totally enlightened, I'd probably have a gazillion, million, trillion more clients. Yes or yes? Because, hey, I'm the one who knows. So that's another marker. What's another marker for when my life is ideal? I am totally enlightened. Well, it would be that at any moment in any time, you could tap into that unbounded source of infinite knowledge that is within you and have the answer to any question. So these are markers. And so they can be abstract, they can be concrete, and you just have to think, what would other people comment about you? What magazine cover would you be on? If I was totally enlightened, I'd probably be on the cover of Om Times or, some spiritual magazine, Yoga Journal, right? You want to think about what kind of award could you get? These are markers. These are all markers. Award that I might be able to get if I was totally enlightened. I don't know if I'd get an award for being totally enlightened, but if I was a world-renowned Olympic skier, then I would get the gold medal. There's an award. That's a marker. So markers can be all kinds of things. Just start to think, what would happen? What would have to happen if that passion was fulfilled 100%, no room for improvement? What would you feel? What would other people comment? And what would be a byproduct of that marker being fulfilled? Magazine cover, being on a box of Wheaties if you're an Olympic gold medalist, if you're a great scientist, then you might receive some great award, the Nobel Peace Prize. So there you have it.